How's it going, guys? It's Mr. Lo4f, and today I'm going to go and do the contract called Jumbo Bridge. It's to get this big drawbridge built on the first map called Pipeline Bay, which links me to an island that I can then go and explore the map called Flatlands. And I previously went and recovered this truck. What's it called? The FEMM 37 or something. Because to do this mission, I've got to get 4 lots of fuel from that gas station there and take it over to Pipeline Bay. And then once I'm here, I'll pop out that gateway, and then you've got to come down here. Well, it's convenient to do it in kind of one run and grab that generator trailer. And this is where I was saying, in theory, if you did unlock that kind of gateway over the water with the ferries, you'd cut out a hell of a lot of distance. But there's 3 different missions on contract, to do that ferry crossing, and yeah, in the scheme of things, you'd probably save 10-15 minutes on this mission, but strictly speaking, I could probably save the same amount of time by taking what I'd work out to be a quicker truck, really. Although, obviously, the reason I wanted to rescue this truck and do this mission with it, I mean, there's a good example just straight off the bat. It's an articulated truck. When I hit that ditch, it kind of yanked my entire cab round to the right, which here, there, and everywhere kind of is a bit of an issue, especially in, like, what is generally an off-roading game. Obviously you've got bits of highway and that you can drive down, but yeah, as you're bouncing down the road, obviously your cab is kind of like getting jerked left or right depending which kind of wheel you're landing on first, which can get a little bit sort of awkward and a bit old after a while. I'm going for a little bit of a shortcut here, but yeah, obviously the other reason I wanted to get this truck is just generally because it's a new truck and I wanted to get it, have a go in it, drive it around. This was a good excuse to use the vehicle. The reason why I very specifically wanted this vehicle for this mission is, as I said, I need 4 lots of fuel, which I'm now going to get from this gas station here, and then I've got to take them over. I'm dropping them all off at the drawbridge thing, but yeah, I'm going to go and grab the generator trailer on the way. Otherwise, again, if you had the I don't know, if you had the ferry crossing, it'd be worth grabbing the generator trailer anyway. But I was going to say, like, yeah, maybe if you had that unlocked, you could do it in separate runs and it wouldn't be too bad. But at the garage, I'm on the reactive zone map, and I'm starting from the reactive zone garage. And obviously the reason I've done that really is because if I started on Pipeline Bay, I'd have to set off from that garage over to the gateway. Then basically the line I'm taking now, after this petrol station and back, I'd have to like do double what I'm doing now to drive all the way here to get the fuel, then back to the gateway. And the fact that this truck has a 4-slot cargo bed on the back, essentially, like, it cuts it out. There is other ways around it. There's no trailer store at the reactive zone garage, and there isn't even one at the Pipeline Bay garage. So if I wanted to do this mission with a different truck, where, say, I wanted to take a trailer with me, in theory at the minute, the quickest, in quotes, because it certainly wouldn't be, the quickest way for me though would be to spawn a truck and everything at Pipeline Bay, then drive to the trailer store on Pipeline Bay, then to the reactive zone gateway, then from that gateway to this petrol station, then back to the gateway. It'd be a bit of a trek, to be honest, whereas this thing having 4 slots of cargo, that just solves the 4 lots of fuel. And then I was right, and I kind of assumed it would be the case that I was still able to tow a generator trailer behind this thing, which, just for an example, like the twin steer, you can hold 4 cargo, but it can't tow a trailer. But I don't know off the top of my head. I didn't specifically try it, but in theory, you just have to get the trailer to the box, so it might let you just tow it with a winch, because obviously the alternative, really, with this mission, if you want to cut out the hassle of having a trailer, that's like why, say, this or the twin steer becomes like very handy, because just at the minute there isn't really many to any trailer stores kind of in any convenient locations on the map. But yeah, the fact that this can attach a trailer as well, like I could tow that generator trailer behind me, and on some missions normally you need to attach it to you to cash it in, but yeah, there might be a chance that you could get away with just winching it behind a twin steer or something. But yeah, that was my options really. Like I say, it was get a different normal truck. I certainly could have got like a quicker truck, say the Dolphin for example, with a ramped flatbed, but the amount of extra trekking I'd have to do from the first map it'd make this mission a bit of a long one, to be honest. Even though, what's it now, ends up being 37 minutes. I think it probably would have been nearer like a good 50 minutes, and that's with a quicker truck if I'd had to do all the extra steps of getting a trailer and whatnot. Yeah, you can see those I'm driving along, just every now and then it yanks the steering, which obviously you can't really help. The truck itself, I won't go too into details because I'm going to end up doing a review video on it, and I prefer doing them anyway because in theory it's kind of like the same standard benchmark, and I think some of these later DLC maps, whether for better or worse, I think it works out nicely in some cases, but I think they code the landscape or whatever, just tweak things to make it possibly a bit harder, a bit slower, all the rest of it. That's what she said. Whereas those original maps are just kind of, I think for the most part, I've certainly had some DLC vehicles in the past that seem to behave like a bit slow and iffy on like the new DLC maps, but when you actually take them back to sort of Black River and all the original maps, yeah, it just falls more in line with like pretty standard terrain on the game. So I'll reserve my full judgment for yeah, when I send it around the track, which I'll try and get done in the next couple of days, really. Yeah, because I quite like doing the gameplay and review videos. It makes it more of a pain when you know you've got a vehicle that's pretty crap. Which I'm not saying this is. My first impressions are, I mean, it's got massive tyres, which is nice, 71-inch tyres. But say, for example, some of these maps are quite rocky and, yeah, in fact, here might be like a perfect example. You're driving along, there is one thing I will say as well. I still need to get the, this has engageable diffs on it, which I haven't unlocked at the minute. They must be on the Flatlands map, because I've searched all the other 3 maps and I've collected, I believe, all the upgrades. So there is that, but you can see now, like, trying to crawl, I'm hitting the front wheel on one rock on that side, and the rear wheels are just kind of dropping off there. I don't know why, by the way. I fired a winch out and it pulled my loaf off the roof. So I just quit and reloaded for a couple of reasons, to be honest, because it was just a bit of a crappy section. I wasn't even paying too much attention myself, so I just thought, right, quit and reload and we'll do it again. But yeah, it's rare and unlikely I would normally say this, but I believe they're 71-inch tyres, and they might possibly be slightly too big for the truck, because what it ends up feeling like while you're driving along a bit is, I don't know, just again, when like my first car I said I had like 17-inch alloys on it, which were just too big for the car. It was just a pretty gutless engine and all the rest of it. And yeah, it basically had the end result of like gearing my car down, or whichever way, I'd say gearing it down to where it was like, it just didn't like trying to turn tyres that big. And the same with this thing. I think in theory, if it had slightly smaller tyres, the truck, assuming it kind of plays out this way in the game, but yeah, should in theory have a slightly easier time rotating the wheels. Yeah, this one just feels like it's lagging a bit, like it's, I don't know, I've sort of said before as well, you almost get the feeling like as if the clutch was slipping or something. It doesn't necessarily feel like it's always quite picking up to what you'd hope. And even in high gear, really, it's ticking along in high gear, but it doesn't, there's a lot of trucks that have like that distinctive waft of power once you get it in high gear and it officially kind of like winds up rather than kicking you out and stalling. Yeah, this doesn't really feel like it ever quite gets there. And really, say compared to the twin steer as an example, because obviously they're pretty similar trucks, only this being like an articulated one and the twin steer not being. But the twin steer's got the high range gearbox as well, and that does wind up. I suppose this thing, if it's got the I suppose it's like the advanced special gearbox, it's not terrible considering. But yeah, that's what I kind of like felt as far as that goes. It's not the most rapid truck going. Yeah, I've got the top engine for it. The power, it's not quite S+, but it's like A or something. It seems fairly high, but again, it either, like I say, it's I'm not necessarily saying I'd want smaller tyres on it, because I don't know how much of a difference that'd make. But it'd be interesting to see, like maybe if one of the mods that are added of it, if there's like a different tyre size to test out, or I wonder if it'd make much difference or not. But anyway, yeah, went through the gateway to Pipeline Bay. Oh yeah, and then I was like, where the bloody hell's my loaf? It was on my roof. Because it wasn't packed, like it was just kind of squidged on the roof. When I travelled through the gateway, it left the loaf behind, so I quit and reloaded the game, got the loaf off the roof, packed them on the cargo, went back through the gateway, and then yeah, now I'm here. Got to go down the right hand side of the map, and then grab that generator trailer, which I'm assuming you wouldn't really gain much time if you went and grabbed one from the trailer store anyway. And then yeah, that's where the gateway is, so I'd be able to cut over the river if I got that unlocked, which obviously save looping around quite a bit. But yeah, you've got to do like the bridging the gap mission, and also I just want to get this done because I want that drawbridge built. And then yeah, going back up here, I see these little lines drawn in there. I was like, yeah, that is classic. It was like 4:59 p.m. on a Friday, and the guy was like, yeah, I'll get these lakes done. And I was like, oh shit, 1 minute to go. Da 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 da. Job's a good one. Or as Mrs. texts him saying, my bisexual college friend needs picking up at the airport, can you help? He's like, yeah, I'm on the way. Flying out there like Batman. But yeah, pretty much not quite doubling back on myself, but going back up the map the long way. At least around now you kind of get back to a highway for the most part. I think somewhere around here it goes back to dirt roads for a little bit. Yeah, and down to the bridge. I just, because this game seems to want to be trolling me as much as possible, I just lost about the last 10-15 minutes of audio because it said an unknown error. So we're back to this section of the map again. I think I was already past getting the generator trailer. But yeah, this truck, a few things I think would help improve it a little bit, which I think was what I was kind of generally going on about. Obviously the articulation in general, they don't do a very good job of it in this game really. And it can be done because Fox has done it before. He nailed it years ago with the Azov Iceberg. That's actually got like a combination of articulation and still got normal steering as well, which is nice to have a combination of both. But yeah, I'm sure there's some other vehicles as well he's done that the articulation's fine. Angry Ginger Life, he's done various vehicles. Some of them have got articulation and they all work fine. The Max Truck Pack, I know I've tried some of their trucks before. I think the last one I tried of theirs was the K7M, the tractor, and I'm sure he does like non-articulated version as well. Thanks to Mark Rowe, by the way, for letting me know. I think it is the Max Truck Pack guy that's got I believe it's 3 versions of this truck, and 2 of them are like with a solid chassis, so it'll just have normal steering. Yeah, which would certainly, it'd be pretty interesting to try. I think in general, yeah, I'd rather they added this as just like with a solid chassis and normal steering, just because, like I say, they don't really do they just never make the articulation strong enough. And you see like there, for example, I think I got smacked on like a tree, but it yanks your cab around, and it's not too bad on like wider swampy sections and all the rest of it, but there can be times you weave in kind of along a mountain road, and yeah, you hit a rock and it yanks your cab to the side. And not just that, sometimes you can then get stuck in a situation where, because like the articulation's pretty weak, if I was just sat still now and trying to turn the wheel, it can barely, like, the truck won't really turn. It'll only, like, the articulation only really kick in if you drive in forwards or backwards, so it kind of rolls on its wheels, right? It can't really scuff them over each way. So yeah, you can get into a situation sometimes, or maybe you're cutting through trees or whatever, and you could bump a log, get twisted sideways a bit, and then you basically like get stuck because you can't really reverse out of there because your truck won't articulate the other way, which effectively means like if you're near enough stuck, say yeah, in some trees or on a bit of a tight track, your steering only really works when you're going forwards or backwards. So when you are stuck, you potentially have no steering either. And you can see there as well, I think I clipped my front right tyre and it kind of yanked my cab around. Which the other bad thing about that can be, obviously it bleeds all your speed, you've got to drop out of the gears. This thing isn't exactly that keen on climbing up the gears to begin with, so if you're actually in 5th gear and travelling along like wound up in 5th gear, yeah, to keep losing that momentum is a bit of a pain, because this thing's slightly on the thirsty side as well. It's got a pretty decently sized fuel tank, but I've seen it a few times, particularly when I was going in the low ranges, which for the most part I tested them out. They're pretty useless at the minute, particularly because I haven't even got diffs unlocked. I think the diffs will help this a bit, but I don't think it's going to be an absolute like night and day difference. I think it'll obviously help coordinate all the wheels a little bit better. And yeah, I don't know, for some reason they just, like, they seem to err on the side of caution when it comes to adding, like, a genuinely good truck to this game. There always seems to be, like, they'll add a truck that was probably in theory at some point like a good truck, but then you can just tell they have to, like, then give it various nerfs, whether it's like a smaller fuel tank, not enough power, etc, etc. There always seems to be, like, some cost, but it's a shame in a way, because by now really they should just add, like, a pretty all-round beastie truck, because this game kind of plays out like it's effectively an open world game. I know it's split into loads of different maps, but it's an open world game that we can drive around and choose what missions we want when we want. And yeah, as far as completing missions go, if we had like an absolute beast mode truck, it's up to us if we can take that. Like, you then have the options of the missions are sort of potentially easy, but then you can scale it back, which is what I do as well. Like, when I play some missions, I just work out how much time I've got really that night, like factor in that I'm going to end up trying to sail a loaf across the ocean or something. But yeah, if it's an easy-ish mission and I know I've got enough time, I'll kind of get a bit of a slower truck, make it a bit more difficult for myself. And yeah, if I need if it's a bit of a bigger mission, I just kind of need to get on and all the rest of it, then I'll get a beast mode truck. I know we've got like the Zik 605R, but we've also got mods as well, so I don't really know why they tend to be so worried about adding like a really good truck, because we all have the option via mods. Yeah, got down to here and grabbed the generator trailer, and I think at this point, well, my brother turned up and my cat was also floating around because he needed feeding again, so I was nearly about to set off, and I was like, no, while I'm at kind of a checkpoint as far as saving the footage and all the rest of it goes, I'll wait here for a minute. And then yeah, flying around the long way back to this drawbridge, which will kind of unlock that island. It's funny though, while I mention it, just if people are wanting to cross the water, obviously got the loaf, he's goddamn professional, he does figure it out. He can kind of slowly diagonally float his way across rivers. But I used earlier the Grad, and the reason why, for those of you that don't know, if you drive the Grad into deep enough water, the front of the truck floats, and then the thing basically like stands up in the water. Its rear wheels, obviously you can drop it into like low range with the diffs on and all that. Yeah, the rears are kind of touching the riverbed, seabed or whatever, and the front of it is just kind of peeking enough out the water that it was taking no damage, or on some of the deepest bits it took like 3 or 4 damage. But yeah, I also just happened to have like a service thing attached to the back of it, so I had about 800 repair points, whatever it was. But yeah, I used it to the other little island on this map. You've got to build a bridge. The contract's called Bridging the Gap. There's an upgrade on that island, and I've obviously not built the bridge yet. Yeah, I was kind of hoping that the upgrade was going to be the diffs for this, and after I got a couple of upgrades on the different maps, none of them were. So like I say, my process of elimination, I'm assuming that the diffs of this thing is on the flatlands, which, like I say, it's not the end of the world. I'll make sure I get them before I do the gameplay and review for this truck. So yeah, in the next day or so I'm probably going to have to explore that flatlands map as well. And yeah, I've got the footage for the what's it called, Aviro Hills, which, yeah, I'm still wondering what to do about that. I don't mind doing the footage and the video and all the rest of it. I just, the end result, I don't know, it's like objectively very helpful really. I kind of went the wrong way a few times, and yeah, probably ended up being a bit of a long way round really. I mean, I stayed stubborn and we got it done. The loaf did have to cross a few rivers. I think they'd have to zombie winch a Zix across a river at some point. I mean, you can see with this vehicle, particularly when you get into the boggy section, like if you just watch the actual tyres, it doesn't feel like it sends enough power to them. They're not fully coordinated. Again, I assume the diffs will solve that to a degree, but then it's also going to equally feed all 6 tyres, and in some cases that can make the vehicle feels like it runs out of power a bit really. I'm trying to think, as an example, like the P12, I believe has got the same engine as the P16, but obviously the P12 is all-wheel drive, the P16 is just rear, but that's got 2 rear axles. Just the fact that that's feeding 2 axles instead of 3, I don't know if it's completely this, but then the P16 definitely weighs a hell of a lot. Yeah, it just feels more like there's more power and everything to the wheels. The P12 feels like it's getting drowned a bit by the amount of wheels it's trying to feed, which isn't even like a crazy amount particularly. And yeah, it's the same with this thing where, like I say, I'll reserve full judgment for when I get the diffs and all the rest of it, but yeah, it's one of these rare things where it might, in theory, benefit from smaller tyres. Well, I mean, it'd be better if they just, like for example, with every truck, they should pretty much add an option to have like S Plus on the power rating, even if you have to buy NOS and put it on the truck. I'd be willing to do so. You can see there it's almost run out. I went down into the low ranges. Obviously there's not much use at the minute because I haven't even got the diffs. I believe the diffs are going to be like, when I look in the garage it says engageable diffs, so I believe that's where like I can only turn them on when I go down into the low ranges anyway, which means this truck's still going to suffer pretty similarly when it's going along in auto. You can see now, by the way, I've kind of, my front left tyre's got wedged on like a bit of a rock. But yeah, this thing doesn't have the articulation power to kind of steer left or right to get over the rock, go around the rock. And the amount of power left that it's feeding to the rear hasn't really got enough to climb over that rock. And yeah, at this point I was actually thinking like, I'm kind of getting fairly stuck. I was firing some winches out. I actually managed, it appears in this section they have kind of put loads of little stupid trees that just pop out of the ground. So I kind of ran out of those options. I mean, I've always got the loaf with me. This is part of the reason why I do take him around, because worst case I'll just jump the loaf off now and it'll either be a mobile winch point or just full on yank the truck out by himself because he's a goddamn professional. Yeah, thankfully for a bit of reversing and kind of driving forward just at some point I managed to get my tyre kind of unsnagged from the lip of that rock, and yeah, just about had enough power to claw my way out of there. But I certainly wouldn't say this is the most demanding terrain situation. Like the Zix, I think, for example, would have walked over that. The Dolphin would have smashed over it. So yeah, for example, I probably wouldn't want to take this thing out on like Northern Aegis installation on phase 4 because yeah, I think it'd get eaten alive. Particularly as well when you start going on, like, I'm driving along at the minute and fairly flat, but if you're going up mountains and kind of leaning a little bit and all the rest of it, that's where the articulation really will bite you, because if you're driving along, like say I was just leaning over to the right on a bit of a hill, the articulation will naturally want to start leaning down the hill and making you drive down it. So to try and just stay level on the hill, you're going to keep applying steering to the left, and I know you would to a degree if you just had normal steering, because you might just start like understeering and scuffing down the hill a bit, but it's sort of different the way this does it, because once the cab just starts flopping down the hill, you haven't even got the articulation to fight it, so you almost have to roll through the steering to try and hope the articulation will fight back round to the left. I've also noticed as well, I don't believe I rolled this truck, or did I? I don't know, I don't think I rolled it in this video. I think I've rolled it at some point. But anyway, point being, yeah, I'd say it's not the most low down kind of weighted vehicle, which is probably going to suffer a similar fate really to the twin steer, although the twin steer tends to fall over as a consequence of like the fact that it's pretty rapid. This thing, yeah, I think a couple of times, I'm sure it was in this video, it must have been, because I haven't really driven it a hell of a lot other than that. I sort of started to tip over. I suppose it's one of the few cases where the articulation can help in that sense. As I start to tip, if you kind of steer out of it, your truck just becomes, you know, enough of like an L shape that it doesn't quite want to tip anymore. But that being said, I wouldn't really call it an advantage over other trucks, because I'd say this is tippier in the first place to get you in that situation. So there is definitely other trucks that are far more planted than this. And just like the general trucks, I mean the long nose colob is like ridiculous. That's harder to tip than not tip, but that's kind of the top end of the tipping tree, that one. It's a pretty tall vehicle, this, so I'm assuming at some point, like, it's got a snorkel that, it doesn't go over the roof, but it's kind of right up to the rear of the cab, which is actually a pretty handy place for it to be, because as you kind of nosedive when you first go into rivers, it's the front of your truck that just kind of face plants the water, and if you have a snorkel on the front of the truck, that quite often, yeah, you're basically dunking that first, but once you kind of get some of the truck in and you start to level out and get the rear of your truck in and that, yeah, so like the fact that the snorkel's actually in a nice place, in theory this should be capable of crossing some pretty deep rivers and all the rest of it, because of how tall it is. But yeah, I think the thing that'll bite it is the articulation might, if you start running over rocks on like the seabed or whatever, but the other thing is just the powers, yeah, not that you can see now, like just bumping over that a little bit, it's just about running out all the time. I mean, the high gear, it's just about hanging on for dear life. It's, to be fair, considering it does feel pretty brutally slow as far as, like, especially when you're in high, you don't feel that rush of torque like you do on some other trucks. But yeah, it doesn't kick you out of it like a crazy amount. But you tend to find you're running out of power. I naturally go back into auto because it's like the obvious choice. But yeah, it's not brutal for just saying stalling every 2 seconds. So I'm outside the garage now. I just stopped there to save the footage and change it back to day. By the way, while I remember, because it does drive me more mad than it even should, but the daylight and everything on this game, for the last couple of seasons, it's been pretty crap where it doesn't feel quite like it's midday. Thankfully, on these phases and whatever, when you change it to 1 PM, it's nice and bright, but it runs out very quickly. It only takes like a minute or two, only gets to about 2 or 3 PM. And it starts feeling a bit sunset again, but it's better than nothing. At least when I change it to like midday, it does actually feel like a nice bright sunny map, which is good, because it should. It's kind of a wasted opportunity when they make it all a bit kind of dulled out and half sunsetty. Yeah, so now I've made it to the garage though, like, for the most part I'm now going along the highway, because like I said, this thing's a bit of a thirsty beast. The good thing is, I mean, I just went past the garage there and I already knew, in theory, if I wanted to, I could, you know, just spawned a truck, drove out and refueled myself and all the rest of it. I was just curious to see how this thing does with fuel. So I've got my Lo4f, obviously. I've already transferred some fuel, and I can't remember if I've done the actual low fuel tank as well. But this thing's got a little roof rack on it, which has got 140 fuel, which is pretty decent for the size of the roof rack. Yeah, that's not too bad. So I suppose, in a way, you can sort of count this vehicle as having, what's it got, 340, so it'd be 480, 480 litres of fuel. And there, by the way, for what it's worth, I've noticed a few vehicles do this, but it doesn't normally become an issue. When I drove through that box there, the front tyres were in the box, so it offered me, like, the mission. But then, as that box went between the front and the rear tyres, it then, you know, got rid of it like it was not recognising them in the box. That's what she said. But yeah, so it's obviously based on, like, when your tyres are touching the box, not when your truck is over it. I was only throwing it out there because this is just one of the few vehicles that kind of has a long enough wheelbase where that was actually an issue there. And that's the only reason I just slammed on there and reversed quickly, because it was like, no. Now there's principles. So I am getting that mission. And yeah, as I was saying there with the fuel, I could have brought a truck out of the garage and just refueled this, but I wanted to see how it goes. And yeah, it's a bit of a thirsty beast. It more costly, like going along now, it's not too bad, because considering it's the advanced special gearbox, it's not that slow really. But obviously once you're wound up in speed, like, you can sort of see your litres per minute drop, relatively speaking. It might be up to 20, 25 when you're trying to build the speed, but once you're actually ticking along, that kind of drops down. But yeah, when you get to the swampy sections or just trying to climb over stuff like this, because this feels like there's not a lot of torque in the truck, everything feels like it's taking a bit longer to get going, or like I said, you sort of got that slippy clutch feeling. The entire time that's happening, it's burning fuel. And when I went down into like the low ranges and stuff particularly, you can see it now, it's near enough getting there. You're getting on for 30 litres a minute, so It's not the thirstiest truck in the game. I still think the Navistar probably takes the cake with that one. Yeah, I got to it. Oh, crap, there's a bloody roadblock going on. Didn't really help. Thankfully, there was just after a little bit of encouragement. I mean, to this thing's credit, it couldn't climb over these rocks, but it got its nose up at least, which was then, yeah, I was able to reach those trees. But the winch alone wouldn't pull me over those rocks either. I had to do a combination of like driving and the winch. I wasn't really too happy about it otherwise. And then I think, yeah, like I got stuck on a rock there and just propped on my front tyre, but again, just because of the nature of articulation, that wants to twist my cab around and yeah, just gets just not as good. Plus I find, particularly this is quite a long wheelbase, and with articulation in general, just in this game, I assume to a degree it must play out in real life. Say if I'm turned fully to the left, the truck has a tendency to understeer, because at that point you've got the rear half of the truck that's being powered by two axles, but they're obviously running parallel to like the rear of the chassis. So when your truck, the front of the cab is like turned left or right, yeah, you've almost jackknifed your truck, but then as it hits like its maximum turning limit, it just kind of has the, I don't know, yeah, where like the rear of the truck's now pushing you at an angle, and like I say, it's almost like it's jackknifing you and then causing you to understeer. And yeah, sections like this, I ended up running out of fuel. Well, I've got the, not only I've got the roof rack and the loaf, but just for what it's worth, with this mission, the generator trailer itself has 1,500 litres of fuel, so you got more than enough, and just by coincidence and convenience, just before you get to the drawbridge, there's a fuel station. So, because yeah, I learnt my lesson the hard way years and years ago in this game, where I took a trailer, yeah, from, what was it, Black River. There's a maintenance trailer you got to take from like the oil fields in Black River over to the far side of Smithville Dam, and I borrowed some fuel out of it on the way, and then it wouldn't accept the trailer. And this was back when we had like stock vehicles and weak engines and all that, so it took me about an hour to drive that route, and then I had to reset the mission, even though I ended up giving the trailer the fuel back. Just the mission wasn't happy at that point. So yeah, I get pretty wary now of dipping into mission trailers, their fuel supply, but in theory, obviously I didn't have a fuel station when that bit me years ago. Yeah, I should be able to borrow it. I mean, I'll have to try it when I, oh yeah, speaking of which, my bloody mod thing, yeah, I apologise, I was a bit gutted that I had to miss the live stream, but I just couldn't get this bloody code. In the end, I don't know, about 5.5 hours before the live stream started, about 9 PM that night, yeah, trying to get this code. It was just being a complete troll, and I still couldn't get it. I ended up getting it in the end at about 6:30 in the morning. It's about, oh no, sorry, probably about 5:30 in the morning actually. Yeah, it's probably about 3 hours after the live stream would have started. And yeah, it just kept sending me a bloody code, but it wouldn't get to my phone until like 20 minutes later or whatever, and the code expires after 15, so every time I got a bloody code, I was typing it in, it just kept saying like, you know, not accepting it, so then I'd have to resend another one. And yeah, just kept going around in circles, resetting my phone, deleting stuff off it. My bloody emails as well, I got about 15,500 emails on there apparently. That started counting down, and then it got down to 96 emails, then it started counting back up, so I was like, oh, fair enough, it's having some kind of fit and it's re-downloading all the emails. It was ticking along nicely for the first few thousand, and then it just started getting slower and slower, and this was now coming up to like an hour or two before the live stream. And then it got to about 14,800 emails, and then freaked out. Then the number started going down again. I was like, oh my god, just had to watch it, like delete all the emails again and try and re-download them. Yeah, and then a few hours after the live stream, I eventually, like, I clicked on an email, because I actually got one of the emails about 12 minutes after I sent it, so I had 3 minutes where it's still valid. So yeah, I clicked on it, and then it was just saying loading. It wouldn't load the email up, so I couldn't see the code, but I was about that close. I was a whisker away, and this, by the way, this was about 2:15 in the morning, so it was about 15 minutes before the live stream. That was like my last ditch hope, thinking, yes, I've got the email in time. And yeah, it just stuck on the loading thing. And then eventually, hours later, I opened another email that got there in time. And then that one said, but he can't download from the server. And yeah, it was just a pain in the arse. By the time I got it sorted, even though it was like I'd missed the boat really for doing the live stream. Yeah, I near enough had like a headache by the end of the night just from fucking around for that many hours trying to like, it was driving me mad. I'm a pretty calm, chilled person. There's something about when technology starts being a pain in the arse. Drives me mad. And yeah, I'm not too impressed. But eventually we got the fucking thing done. So I have access to my mods again, which is nice. So yeah, I apologise though for missing the live stream. I certainly wasn't happy about it, especially being like the first live stream back when the new phase out. But yeah, I just couldn't. If I load my map up without the mods, then yeah, it's going to delete like, I must have 500 mods on my mod playthrough. I mean, I've pretty much exclusively done it with mods, so it'll delete near enough every vehicle on there. Yeah, got to here, dropped the fuel off, dropped the trailer off. I do apologise again as well. I missed it. Well, not missed it. It's the footage glitched like a tiny bit of the animation of the bridge, but it caught most of it. Yeah, once you drop the stuff off, well, drop the fuel off. That's kind of like stage 1 of the mission, and then just drive forward. And as you can see, as soon as the trailer touched the box, it kind of counts it. So that's where you might be able to get away with just winching it, say behind a twin steer, for example. Yeah, then it does an animation, drops the bridge, opens those little gates. And then that's it. I assume the bridge will just stay down permanently now. 30-odd thousand for the mission, which is not a bad little payout, considering you also get a bridge, which normally in this game they tend to like. The missions will pay out normally, but the more you get on the side, the less they'll kind of pay in comparison. And yeah, nice little view, but I'm glad that's done now. I can get on with getting Flatlands done as well, and I'll get on with reviewing this truck fairly soon, hopefully. But yeah, that's about it for today though. I hope you enjoyed, hope that helps. Thanks for watching. Get yourself a loaf because it's a whopper, and I'll be back soon.